Well, I'm gonna do some repair work on my little power pack. This little part broke, so I had to change this. But it's working pretty decent now. But there's the bottom. Yeah, it's a little battery, made a little mount. Had some extra car audio parts laying around, so I can disconnect and reconnect pretty easily. Nice. 1,000-watt inverter. It's enough to run like a mini fridge or a campsite, my telescope, all my other equipment. Just using all Vectron charge controllers, 20 amp solar charge controller, and it's got Bluetooth in it, which is neat. Pretty good app, good monitoring. And the load output actually to this, so I can monitor the power draw through this, which is neat. But this is a little 12 to 12 9 amp isolator converter. So it'll take whatever the voltage is outputting of this, which is usually the battery voltage. It could be anything. It could be like 11.5, it could be 14.2 volts, it could be a whole host of that. So I got this little thing here, so it powers these little plugs there. So my telescope, anything that's in these is regulated. And these, USB, and these are cigarette lighter jacks. I can go for, I can plug in like another charge controller if I want, another inverter, cigarette lighter. I also like to have the ability of having, this is a 17 amp AC charger, so that's what the input plug there passes through, plugs into this, and then I can charge the battery right off of home power, and then you can see I cut in like ventilation fans, and there's the thermocouple, and intake and exterior fans. But I just used a simple Stanley box. You see, it's powered down, but basic ground bus. Didn't try to overcomplex everything, but everything is on this little stack, and you can see it's all loose. But when it's all put together, it's pretty rigid inside the system, and I try to cram as much crap into this as I could without worrying about choking it out. There's enough room for air to flow in and out of the system, and everything stays reasonably cool. I don't, even though this is a 1,000-watt inverter, I never draw 1,000 watts. I might, if that, pull like up max 300 watts is usually my target on something like this, but you always go a little bit bigger. If you need a 300 watt inverter, 3 watts of power, you get it bigger than a 300 watt inverter. That's the general rule. But I got this charge controller though because it's does pretty decent high voltage. So I got a Sanyo panel, an old school module up north at my brother's, up the observatory, and most charge controllers can't handle the voltage that single panel kicks out. So, but this one can. So it's pretty nice, and you can see it just passes through, and I got it wired with quick connects. So you just plug the panel to that when everything's put together. But I figured this was kind of neat. I mean, it's nothing too fancy. I mean, I think anybody could wire this. You just, just keep track of where everything's at and try to do clean work and try to secure things, because, you're going to move stuff around, and as long as everything's that, and don't over torque your screws, and you just think about what you want and how you want it to make it work. And but for anybody interested in that, especially if you're an astronomer, these things are really cool because it's hard to see, but let me see if I can get it. Yeah, there's a little, see that little hole there? There's a little thermistor trim pot there. So you take a flathead screwdriver and you can adjust it. So I hooked a multimeter up to the output, and you know, dialed it until it said exactly 12.5, because I figured 12.5 would be a good one. I actually want to get one of these separate, because I don't want to drive my camera or any of my other stuff with the 12 beyond 12.5 volts. I want a nice, you know, just comfortable voltage. But my mount, I actually want to drive that thing at 14 volts. So I might get one of these, and I think they got a version smaller than that, where power will go 12.5 volt into it, and then I'll dial it in to output 14 volts, just so I can get the maximum amount of torque out of my steppers on my Exos. But there you have it. I got it turned on, so you can see the little light. I can turn off the power inverter. You know, little thing that's handy for like campers, but can't really. See, it's like I can lift it with one hand. I mean, it's heavy, but it's not, you know, too heavy. If that was lead acid, no way. I don't even think this box could handle the weight. Yeah, it's. So right now, let's see, the battery is pretty much was worn all the way down, so charging up from dead charge via the utility. And 12.1, so I believe it cuts out at 14.2, but don't quote me on it. Yeah, basically, it's in Celsius, FYI, but whatever. You guys can Google figure out what that is in Fahrenheit. But yeah, if it gets a little over temperature, this blows air into the cabinet, and that one exhausts the air out of the cabinet. There we go. That's what it looks like on the inside. And, you know, usually it's I'm not really too worried about, you know, overheating, because I underdrive everything in this unit. I don't push my equipment hard, and that's how you get your equipment to last. I think this box will physically break down before any of the electrical components will fail. But I wanted to make it also elegantly simple and get rid of all the gimmicks. Because all those gimmicks can be done through the Vectron phone app. Because this utility charger and the charge controller has a really good Bluetooth phone app. But the power regulator, I don't care to have that. They have a version of one of those, which is really neat. The Orion series, and you can actually adjust and change it into like a power supply, a battery to battery charger, isolator. You could do something. I want to get one of those, because if I had one of those, I could plug in into one of these cigarette lighters and plug it into a cigarette lighter in my car in case my car battery died, and this, using that unit, could actually charge the car battery if I wanted to. You would never want to connect this to a car battery direct, because you would get problems. But if I had that little item, and I might get that just for that idea of driving my mount at a custom voltage at 14 volts. And but yeah, you can see I got plenty of ports here, so if I'm ever doing any astronomy, I could plug all my telescopes and all my stuff into that one, because 9 amps is more than enough power to run anything I need. And I want it simple too. Look at fill and there's the output from the inverter. Touchy little thing. So and solar is as easy as just connecting that to the panel, and you know, I think you can figure out the rest. It's nice having a little USB. Really handy for when I take my flats, because I just usually plug my flat panel right into that. But it's pretty slick. Yeah. Probably the biggest quirk is the little phone jack in the back here doesn't grab. I should put some hot glue on that, but whatever. It's like I just jiggle it around and it works fine. But yeah, that's my little power pack. I mean, you could build one yourself. You just got to figure out your spatial reasoning. You got to keep into mind that, you know, I wanted air to be able to flow down that way. The air comes down, runs across these fins, because this thing generates the most heat when I use it. If I use it at the full 17 amp, you can run this version 17 amp and 6 amp. It doesn't say that, it just says 17 the maximum, but yeah, you can switch between the two, which is neat. And the solar, like I said, doesn't really it kicks. These are very efficient. So these heat sinks, they get warm, but they don't get hot. And like I said, the inverter gets warm, but it never gets hot. And there's enough, you can't tell, but I mean, there's enough air. Like I can stick my whole hand down in here, and the same is true over here. So the inverter has lots of area to breathe, and the battery even has area to breathe, but it doesn't really need to, and just lives down there in the first floor. And you know, you can see these kind of boxes are cool because I can, like, you know, I wanted it in 2 pieces so I can get to stuff. And you can see it took me minutes to take this thing apart and put it back together. But hey, if anybody ever wants one of these, and I'm thinking about building these things professionally because I just want elegance and simplicity, but most importantly, ease of repair. Like I said, like I made this because I had to do a little bit of repair work on these things. Are really cheap and they're really thin plastic, and this knockout kind of busted out. So this was all loosey goosey. This one was fine, but this one was like very loose, but it didn't hurt anything because it's literally just an extension cord that's been cut down to be only like 2 feet long, and there's just a plug on the end. So right, and that's, you can't really damage, even if damage occurs to any of this stuff. There's no like loose open wires or any points of damage. The same thing is true here. It's just these wires pass through and they connect through connectors up here. So yeah, everything is fused. Like all these have their own fuses. You know, this is fused as well as regulated and protected from the charge controller. But one last thing too is that because I'm running everything through the charge controller, the regulator is connected to the charge controller, I can monitor the amps and the watts and the voltage leaving the charge controller. So I know how many watts, true watts, are going to my telescope. So I can for sure tell you that my whole telescope with dew heaters, pet cooler running at full power, my mini computer, pretty much all of the things, I've noticed it doesn't creep over 55 watts. So which is pretty darn cool. I'm fine with, and then when the pet cooler is running at lower power, when it's not needing to cool, especially in the winter, I've seen the system run as low as like 25, 30 watts. So pretty darn cool when it comes to having that. And the phone app is very solid. But there you have it. Hope you enjoyed this video and enjoy Drunk's work. Peace.